Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. After my last two videos about tank mechanics, I received several comments asking for one specific topic, threat, or what players simply call aggro. This is probably one of the most misunderstood mechanics in Neverwinter. Some players think that tanks magically clip aggro because of the role. Others think taunts permanently forces bosses to attack you. And some players, the only thing that matters is dealing more damage. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Today, we're going to break down how threat actually works, why tanks sometimes lose aggro even after using a taunt, and what you can do to become a much more consistent endgame tank. So let's get started. What is threat? Before we can talk about aggro, we need to understand threat. Threat is an invisible value. You can see it on your character sheet. You can expect it, but every enemy in Neverwinter is constantly tracking it. Think of every enemy as keeping a hidden scoreboard. Every player in combat has a score. The player with the highest score gets attacked. That's threat. Aggro simply means the enemy is currently attacking the player with the most or with the highest threat. Threat is the calculation, aggro is the result. How threat is generated? This surprises many players. Threat isn't only generated by tank powers. Every player generates threat. You generate threat by dealing damage, healing, certain encounters, and class mechanics. Tanks simply receive a much more larger threat multiplier than the other roles. Community testing has long indicated a substantial base multiplier, commonly cited around 4.5 plus, and many tanks encounters add even more threat on top of that. That means a tank doesn't necessarily need to outdamage the DPS. They need to out-generate threat. Here's something many tanks don't realize. Damage still matters. If threat starts with damage, then increasing your own damage also increases your threat. That's why experienced tanks don't ignore offensive stats completely. More damage means more threat means more consistent aggro. This is one of the reasons some tanks sacrifice a small amount of survivability to gain more offensive power, depending on the content they're running. Now let's talk about taunts. This is where most players get confused. Many people believe a taunt means the boss must attack me. That's not exactly how it works. A hard taunt doesn't permanently lock the boss onto you. Instead, it immediately places your threat slightly above whoever currently has the highest threat. Think of it like this. A wizard has a 100 million threat. A tank has 85 million threat. You use your taunt. Now you're immediately placed just above the wizard. Maybe 110 million threat. The boss comes back to you. But there's the important part. If the wizard immediately deals another massive burst, they can overtake you again. Which is why you probably experienced this before. You taunt, the boss turns, then it instantly runs back to the DPS. That's completely normal. Your taunt gave you the lead. It didn't freeze the threat table. Now let's answer another common question. Why did I lose aggro? Usually it's one of these reasons. There could be more, but let's mention some. Your opening rotation generated too little threat, the DPS bursts too early, you stop attacking, sometimes tanks have to stop attacking to do some boss encounter mechanics. You missed an encounter, you didn't refresh your threat after using a hard taunt, the boss has a scripted threat reset or a tank swap mechanic. Notice something? Losing aggro isn't always the tank's fault. Good TPS players also manage their threat by allowing the tank to establish a lead before uploading everything. That's a recurring point in community discussion. So now I'm going to talk about some of the tank's mechanic. This is for my Paladin, the Justicar. Please check any Guardian Fighter or Barbarian Sentinel guides to help you out. This is only an explanation for the video. As a Paladin tank, my main single target build, or my encounters or my powers are the Oath Strike, which helps me increase the threat. I'm using the Radiant Slam, which once used, it brings me closer to the boss. I'm using the Device Might, gives me a magnitude of 1150. I use this with the Divine Challenger that grants Might the added effect of placing me as a tank on top of the threat list of the target, which helps a lot for the bosses. Also as a backup encounter, Bow of Enmity, which also increases threat, and the tooltip says it places me atop of the threat list of the boss. I'm also using the Binding Oath, which helps me restore some stamina, and whenever attackers are hitting me, they get some radiant damage as well. And I'm using the Aura of Valor, which increases threat generated by nearby party members by 25%, which is a lot of helpful. When calling up artifacts and mount, I pop my Divine Champion effect, which also the threat generated is decreased by an initial 15. This means I pop this, which helped me holding aggro when we are calling pop-ups. And the other thing I'm using is either two dailies, which is Divine Judgment or Divine Protector, using it with the Frost Silver Circle of Protection ring, which has the Manticore Bite. When using a daily, the next enemy that attacks me takes equal damage of 50% of my maximum health points with a 30-second cooldown. If I have 3.3 million, that's half of damage. As I explained with the multipliers, it's a lot of threat. There is a ring, as I mentioned, from the Master Demon Wetpits version, which also has a ring with the same bonus. So I recommend trying to get it. That's how my powers are built. Also, I forgot to mention that one of my features is that my Intimidating Presence is a Divine Champion now increases threat generated and does a 10 magnitude high threat attack every second to neighbor enemies. One of the comments on my last video mentioned the Caldera set. Yes, the Caldera set does include a threat multiplier, so threat bonuses absolutely exist in the game. The question isn't whether it works, the question is whether it's worth giving up strong defensive bonus. Most experienced tanks I've seen discussing the topic don't consider the Caldera threat bonus strong enough to outweigh better defensive or utility sets in game builds. That doesn't mean it's useless, it means it's another tool, not a mandatory one. Now let's try to simplify everything we have talked about. Think of threat like this. Threat equals damage plus healing multiplied by tank threat multipliers plus bonus threat from powers plus hard taunts. Just a disclaimer, this isn't the game's official internal formula. It's a simplified model to help explain the mechanics. And honestly, that's all you need to understand. Generate more threat than everyone else, you keep aggro. Generate less, someone else becomes a tank. Let's finish with a few common myths. Taunts permanently force your enemies to attack you. No, they simply move you to the top of the threat table or the top of the list. Tanks don't need offensive stats. Wrong. More damage also means more threat. Threat also comes from damage. Wrong. Healing also generates threat, although tanks rely primarily on damage multipliers and their threat generating abilities. If I lose aggro, I'm a bad tank. Absolutely not. Sometimes the DPS massively outgear you, sometimes they burst too early, sometimes the encounter intentionally resets threat. Understanding why you lost aggro is much more important than assuming you made a mistake. If there's one thing I want you to remember from this video, is this. Threat are the ones that help you taunt the boss, and aggro is how you keep that threat. So aggro is in a long term how you hold it. Threat is invisible, but it's constantly being calculated. Every attack, every heal, every encounter, every taunt. Everything you do changes that invisible threat table. The best tank just don't survive. They know how to stay at the top of the table from the first pull until the boss dies. Well guys, I'm gonna leave 2 small video clips as well, just to show you the tank's HUD and how to know what is threat and where you can see it, and how your DPS inhibitor can see it, as well from the DPS point of view. So I hope this video helped clear one of the most Neverwinter's misunderstood mechanics. If I did, leave a like and consider subscribing. And if you'd like to see more videos breaking down the game's hidden mechanics, let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching, stay strong, protect your team, I'll see you in Neverwinter.